Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where you get to eavesdrop on your favorite authors without getting caught. I've been stoked to have authors like Angela Hunt, Bill Myers, Nicole Deese, Tessa Afshar, comedian Bob Smiley, and more on the show, and this year I have another great lineup of storytellers and truth-sayers. If you love to eavesdrop at coffee shops like I do, this is the podcast for you. It's where we get real, we get tough, we laugh, and we might even cry. It's where we meet authors on a different level, where every story and podcast episode has its own heartbeat. So hang out with me today. I'm Jamie Jill Wright, your host at Madlit Musings. This is your podcast for real chats with real authors about real life. Today's episode was brought to you by Baker Publishing Group, with Ravel and Bethany House Publishing as divisions. We're super excited to be sponsored by Baker Publishing Group and to bring you their fabulous authors and their fabulous lineup for 2025. Be sure to check them out at bakerpublishinggroup.com and also check out their online bookstore at bakerbookhouse.com. Hey everyone, it is Jamie Jill Wright here with Madlit Musings, and I have Suzanne Woods Fisher back in the studio. This isn't really a studio. This is more like a virtual phone call from both of our offices, but we're back together. Hi, Suzanne. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. And it's so great to see you again, Jamie Jill.
It's so good to see you too. And I'm really excited to chat today because this book is stunning. It's a new book that you've got coming out in May called Capture the Moment. And the cover alone, we could talk about that for about an hour, I think.
It is the first book in my National Park Summers series.
Okay.
And it's so fun to launch a series that you're excited about anyway, but the national parks just hit a chord with all of us.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I think in this time of disunity, there is something about the national parks that makes us all so proud to be Americans. And it's a delight to be part of that and to have a story release at a good time instead of, like just missing something.
Right. And well, the national parks are something that's so unique to, I think, the United States. Like I'm sure there's protected areas in different different other countries and nations, but there's something about the national parks and how that whole thing came into being with Roosevelt and, just the preservation of the different ecosystems throughout ecosystems. I always say ecosystems. My kids are like, it's ecosystem.
Well, I think Yellowstone was the very first national park in the entire world.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, which is really kind of an exciting thing to just think of, again, just being proud of where a country was 150 plus years ago, where we are taking care of these beautiful lands. And
yeah, that's awesome. Now, this one is set in Yellowstone, correct?
Actually, close. This is Grand Teton National Park, which is about an hour or so south of Yellowstone. And this is a story about a young woman named Kate Cunningham, who comes from the East Coast, and she was raised in a very traditional family, the kind of family that doesn't even change the wallpaper in their house because, that kind of
tradition.
Family.
Yeah, you don't change it.
Academic. She was not. And she always struggled in school, which gives you a little sense of who she is. She ended up being a zoo photographer. She loved animals. She loved studying them. She just spent quite a long time really becoming an expert on animal behavior in a zoo setting. Okay. Well, one day a National Geographic editor comes along and is watching her as she's taking pictures of bears and said, if you can get a picture of an iconic bear that we've got our eye on out in Grand Teton, well, I'll take a look at it. And so Kate kind of naively thinks she can take all her skills from the zoo and head to the wild.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Pretty much. Bear is a bear.
Bear's a bear.
And she learns so much in that experience about herself and about the unpredictability of nature and about, just having to depend on others. And it's a really great story of her growing and becoming, the person she's really meant to be outside of the zoo, kind of coming to peace with the person she is, someone who didn't quite fit in the family mold. Yeah. And there's, of course, a love story brewing, and there's a bear. And this bear is what has really, the reason I wrote this story to begin with. It's a charming bear really special bear. She's considered the queen of the Tetons.
Mm.
She's given the number 399 because when she was tagged,
Yep.
that was the number she was given.
Yep.
And she's been one of the oldest grizzly bears to reproduce in the wild.
Okay.
She has had, I think, 22 cubs, and usually multiple litters. But
Yeah.
one time, even as an older mother, she emerged from hibernation with 4 bears cubs. And that's quite a big deal for a grizzly bear because
Yeah.
that is not only feeding them, caring for them, keeping them safe, teaching
Mm-hmm.
them the tricks they are going to need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's an amazing mother. And
Yeah.
just to give you a sense of how amazing, she knew that being near people kept the male grizzlies away because the male grizzlies will go after the cubs because they
Right.
want to mate with the mother and
Right.
get back to business.
Yep.
And so she would keep her cubs close to people. And of course, rangers are there, so it's not that
Right.
close.
Right.
But she would even teach her cubs to look left and right before they cross the road. Truly amazing, amazing. And I just had to write
That's
this story. If
crazy.
you ever go to Jackson, you will see her everywhere. There's just portraits and photographs, and she's really iconic. She is just that kind of a bear. Of course, you don't want to get too close, but
Right.
truly, she's a wild bear. But
Right.
obviously, but she's the kind of bear that reminded us that there's more than we think.
Yeah. Yeah.
To an animal's consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and protectiveness. And I don't know, I think she just taught us how to live together a little bit better than we have been in the past hundreds of years and hopefully for the future.
Yeah, we seem to struggle with that as humans. There's a little bit of that going around, but yeah, I love grizzly bears. I've yet to see one. I go out west pretty much every year, Montana, Wyoming, all that area, and I'm constantly looking for a grizzly, and I've yet to see one. I've seen lots of black bear, but I haven't seen that grizzly yet. Even when I was in Yellowstone, it was like they all went, "Oh, Jamie's here, let's hide."
Yeah.
But they are.
We were taking a drive through one of the parks, and a giant grizzly crossed right in front of us and then stopped on the side of the road to feed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I have a healthy respect for bears. I'm not going to mess with them.
No.
But we actually stopped the car, stayed in the car.
Oh, yeah. Good.
And I undid the window just slightly and took a picture and I have a picture to show you sometime where I am, probably 20 to 30 feet safe in a car. We could get out of there immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Was not messing with the bear, wasn't changing anything about their life.
Right.
But I didn't zoom in. It is like that close a picture. And it's just, it just like, that was one of the best moments I've ever had.
Yes. That's my bucket list moment right there.
It's a privilege just to be that close.
Oh, I know. Well, to be that close and in a car. That's probably the key that we want.
With the gas on.
Yeah. And ready to go if we need. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I know. I've talked with author Karen Barnett.
Yes.
And she used to be, she used to be a former ranger, and she has the stories to tell of people who feel like these wild animals are pets. Like, let's get out of the car. She's like, don't ever approach a wild animal, no matter how cute they are. Just don't do it.
Yeah. I think that is one of the best lessons every single year you hear of people getting just tossed by a bison, upside down.
Yes.
Like, why do you think you're special that you can do this? And,
we were out, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, I was texting Karen right after this happened because we were in South Dakota and we were doing the wildlife loop there in the Mount Rushmore area, and there was a buffalo, and we had stopped, and I should rephrase, there was a creek that we had stopped at the time we stopped and got out of the car. There were no buffalo, and so I had walked down a way, so I was far enough away from the car, and these big bull buffaloes came out of nowhere, and it was me, the creek, and this big bull, and he's staring at me, and I'm like, okay, backing up slowly. Well, these people came and they pull off right away because they see this bull, and she gets out of the car and she starts heading to this bridge with her camera, and she starts walking right up to this bull buffalo, and her husband's in the car going, honey, I don't know if you should do that. She's like, what's he gonna do, eat me? And I couldn't help myself. I yelled at her and I said, I wouldn't do that. He might not eat you, but he will definitely toss you, and I really don't want to see that today. And she just looked at me. She's like, whatever. And she starts walking over the bridge. And then he started pawing the ground and he put his head down. And I'm like, Lord, please stop this because I do not want to see. I don't want to see where this is going to go. And she must have finally caught the hint from the buffalo because she backed away because he started going toward her. And she's going, oh no, oh no, oh no. Like, yeah, I don't want to take out a buffalo head to head. Those things are huge.
I know. And they have signs around, don't pat the big fluffy cows.
Right, exactly. Oh, funny. Well, we've kind of like veered off a little bit, but not a whole lot. So, okay, we have Kate. So she leaves to go do this, try to get this National Geographic epic photo.
Yeah.
Before we get too much in the story, I do have to ask, do you do photography, like, or did you have to suddenly study photography for this book, or?
I do some photography, but
Okay.
I had to study it, like what equipment would a
Yeah.
wildlife photographer use? Also to learn how the wildlife photographers are part of the whole story of the bear, because there's
Okay.
about 22 to 30 of them that every year are watching for this bear to come out of hibernation.
Oh,
And,
interesting.
they're setting up,
Okay.
rangers are aware of them and, just kind of casually there, making sure no one oversteps, gets too close, on and
Yeah.
on. So
Okay.
it went way beyond my capacity,
Sure.
you know, but it was fun to kind of learn about what would be the latest best camera that a
Yeah.
photographer would use. It's just so interesting though, because really we're all moving into iPhone photography.
I know.
It's just not like it has been in the past, unless this is your profession.
Right.
So
Right. No, you're absolutely right with that. Okay. So Kate goes to the Grand Tetons, and then I was reading the back cover copy, and this is literally my brain because I read really fast. I find I skip things. So I read, Kate soon realizes that capturing an image of this bear isn't as simple as she hoped. And then the next line I read is, and it doesn't hurt that he's easy on the eyes. And I was like, that's
the
a
bear.
weird way to describe a bear. And then I realized I missed like 2 sentences about Grant Cooper, who's the
Yeah, isn't it
seasoned ranger who's easy on the eyes.
Yeah.
It's not the bear, it's the ranger.
Yeah, there is a bear management ranger who
Okay.
is, they cross paths, he and Kate, and he's not really looking for a girlfriend by any means. He's got
Sure.
something he's got to clean up. She's got something she's got to clean up in her life.
Yep.
But he keeps coming across her, and he's a little bit jaded, not by people, but just by getting hurt in life. And he prefers bears to people, kind of a guy.
Yep.
But I think she sort of has her innocence, her naivety, her eagerness, her willingness to try and keep trying and keep trying, just kind of appeals to him. So he actually does maybe break a few rules a little bit to help her get that photo, that special photo.
Okay.
Now, so that's kind of brewing. But what is also happening, and this is the first time I've actually gone into teetering on suspense in a book.
Ooh, okay.
Where between every chapter, there is someone else who is after the bear.
Oh.
And so we don't know his identity till the very end, but you're all along, you just feel the two of them heading toward the bear at the same point with different motives in mind.
Oh.
So that was really fun to try to kind of keep that suspense going, and there's some interesting twists and turns along the way.
And so that perspective that's interspersed between the chapters, is he kind of, or he or she, or that perspective, are they kind of nefarious? Like, are they where you sense danger?
Well, he's a poacher.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not spoiling
that's
anything.
nefarious. Yes.
You would find that right at the beginning. But yeah, he is a really super skilled, super clever poacher.
All right. So we have a poacher. We have Kate, who's doing photography. We have Grant, who's the ranger. And is there kind of a lesson that's going through the book too, like a theme, or is it the story just mostly around the bear?
Well, I think there's an evolution of each of the characters.
Okay.
And those are the main characters. There's a couple of secondary characters that are a lot of fun as well. But I think the main characters are really kind of coming to an understanding of who they are, what they want out of life.
Sure.
And that's kind of fun. I always love people who are flawed, who not that they end perfect, but they just end in a better place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes the characters relatable
Hmm.
when you're reading people that aren't perfect or have this amazing journey,
Yeah.
so to speak. Like they're out there struggling with different things and trying to make their way. So
And I have another main character, which is the
okay,
park itself. And it is
yes,
just really, if you haven't been to Grand Teton, it is one of the most beautiful places.
hmm
It is really a valley floor, and then suddenly these majestic, tall Tetons that are just, there's no foothills. It's
yeah,
just boom. And
yeah,
it is just such a beautiful place. Just the river, Snake River, that's wandering through it. And there's there's a time in the history of it. I love the history of a park. I think understanding the indigenous people that had lived there is such a
yes,
critical part of understanding our parks. I think
hmm
what happened later in the late 1800s, and this was when poachers,
oh
well,
yeah,
no, I shouldn't say poachers. That wouldn't be poachers. It would be really more the trappers. That's the
trappers,
word I meant.
yep,
Came through, and they had what they call like rendezvous points where they
yep,
would meet up. And it's just a fascinating
yeah,
history. There's beautiful stories that come out of. There was a time when it was actually farmland, and there
hmm
was a group of Mormon homesteaders, and so there's a barn that is one of the most photographed barn in the entire country.
really,
That they did their best, but the winter just blasted these families, and yet their homesteads are still kind of standing.
okay,
So there's just so much. There's
yeah,
Jenny Lake and Jenny Lake Lodge. There's Taggart Lake. There's Jackson Lake, which was man-made from and dammed up.
okay,
Bears tend to feed at the dam
yeah,
because the fishermen are there, and
hmm
it's just a really very, very special place for people to go. And
yeah,
then Jackson, the town, isn't far, and that's a pretty hip, cool town too.
right.
Oh, there's an elk reserve where in the winter there's just the elk migrate.
Oh, that's cool.
It's the only national park with a private airport, and
Yeah.
you can actually fly in to
Okay.
Jackson.
I didn't realize that either. Wow.
Yeah,
See, the Grand Tetons is one of the parks that I've not been to. I've been to Yellowstone and Glacier. I'm trying to think if there's other, like the Bighorn Mountains out in Wyoming, and a lot of those places, but I've not been to Grand Tetons yet. So that's on a bucket list.
definitely something I think you'd really, really worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. So when did you first start falling in love with national parks and then get this idea for this series?
I think it happened during the pandemic for
Okay.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
That was when suddenly the national parks were on everyone's mind.
Right.
But then I, and I live out in California,
Uh-huh.
so I actually don't live too far from John Muir's home, and
Oh,
that is really cool. It's not
wow.
necessarily something you try to see like the Golden Gate Bridge, but it is definitely an interesting if
Yeah.
you are interested in John Muir and the impact he's had on
Mm-hmm.
the national parks, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think from there, of course, Yosemite, some the other sequoias, parts of California,
Mm-hmm.
places we've lived. But I think it was actually traveling to Grand Teton that gave me this idea. And it started when I went into the gift shop at the Jackson Lake Lodge.
Okay.
And there was this, and that's a beautiful lodge.
Okay.
And there was this cute girl in the gift shop, and she had just been dropped off from her mother from Alabama. Her mother drove her up and dropped her
Wow.
for the whole summer. And this was the first time she'd been out of the state of Alabama.
Oh my goodness.
And she was so excited. And of course, these seasonal workers, the
Mm-hmm.
parks usually have housing for them in dorms.
Okay. Yep.
Sometimes it might be RVs or tents, but there's
They find a
all the different
place.
parks
Yep.
try to fill their seasonal
Yep.
staff
Yep.
as best they can. And I just thought, what an interesting picture of just the summer in the park.
Yeah.
The idea that a young person, or actually seasonal workers I've interviewed quite a few rangers who are
Okay.
teachers throughout the year, and then there's seasonal summer workers, or they're retired volunteers to
Mm-hmm.
the
Yep.
parks. So it's not necessarily that you're young. It's just that struck me as,
Yeah.
wow, what a story there is. So that's what
Yeah.
took me back to my editor with, oh, I've got this great idea.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. My husband and I, when we were out, in one of the years we were out, we were noticing all the different campsites in national parks and how the campsites usually have a camp host, right? And so often it's a couple whose their kids have grown up or whatever, and they've got an RV and they put down roots for the summer, and that's where they stay, and they manage the campsite. And my husband looked at me and goes, "Let's do it."
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that would be so fun.
Yeah.
Just
I know
to,
a number of people who've done that.
Yeah.
And they're not paid,
No.
but they do get to be there all the time, and they get to, be at the park when it is quiet at times, and they love it, and you love people, and you love teaching.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. So is the Grand Teton, would you say that would be your favorite national park? Would that be safe in saying?
Well, I will tell you, I just submitted manuscript number 2, and it is set in Acadia.
Ooh.
Totally different. And this is, we're talking a shipwreck, we're talking islands and ocean, and Cadillac Mountain. I mean, that is totally different, but really, really fun. So that, I'm very excited about that. I'm waiting for revisions, but I know my editor actually read it quickly and gave me a heads up that she loved it. So I'm excited.
Oh, wow. So how many are going to be in this series then? Because, I mean, there's a lot of national parks. You could go on for a while.
I know.
Right.
63.
Oh, 3. Okay. So do we know what the third park's going to be then? Or is that like not being spoken of?
There's 63 national parks, that's what I meant.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, there are three contracted in my series.
Right.
And so my third one, I haven't quite decided. I'm kind of working that between my editor. I think part of me, I would like to do Yosemite because it's just so, Half Dome is just in everyone's mind. They are recognizable.
Right.
But it is California, and a lot of people don't ever get out to California.
True.
Well, they should, because it's part of the most beautiful part of the country.
It is beautiful.
But then there's East Coast, and we look at the Smokies, for example, where a third of the population is within a driving distance of the Smokies.
Yeah, that's true.
Really interesting there too. So personally, I would love to have this series do well enough that I might have another series.
Yeah. I'm envisioning a shelf of 63 Suzanne Woods Fisher books. I think let's shoot for that.
Parks that are seldom visited,
yes, the ones where people are like, I didn't know that was a national park.
We had this in our backyard.
There's a television show that my kids and I used to watch. I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was called Rock the Park. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was 2 guys, and they literally would go to all the national parks, and they did this half-hour show where they tried the different activities and things that you can do at the parks, and you learned about all these different national parks, and the kids just loved that show because 1 week you were underground caving at a national park in I think it was Kentucky, and then the next week we were down in Florida and in like the Everglades, and so they had so much fun with that, and the kids were like, I didn't realize we had this many national parks. And I'm like,
there's so many. It's really a wonderful part of America that
it is.
You try to get to, or get to as many as you can. It's really worth it. Like the mesas, and that's it was discovered by Quaker cowboys, and they found and
I didn't know that.
They found this sort of ghost town where indigenous people had lived.
Okay, sure.
Like, oh my goodness, the story after story after story, you just can't stop.
I think I'm stuck on Quaker cowboys.
I know.
That there makes me want to go do a Google search.
From Utah.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
There is so much history and so much interesting American story just that just weaves and
waiting to be told.
Yes. And waiting to be like re-explored or relearned, I guess. I'm trying to figure out the word I'm looking for, but stories that we haven't even heard about, and then all of a sudden you hear about like Quaker cowboys from Utah.
I know, and I might be wrong. They might have been from Colorado. It was Colorado or Utah, but both places I just thought Quakers. I didn't think they were there.
I picture Quakers in like Pennsylvania, out in the eastern. I don't picture that being a movement in the west.
I just thought there's a story there. I can have
That's
so my other mistakes.
Yeah, there you go. So do you touch on some of the history of the Grand Tetons in this book? Okay.
Yeah, that's the fun of, I have a young girl in this book, and she's
Okay.
in the Acadia book too. She's the
Okay.
granddaughter of a deputy chief or a chief ranger.
Okay.
So you're going to see both the chief ranger, who acts as kind of like the wise older man.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be man, but he happens to be, and I think they'll be in all three stories.
Okay.
And they're a little bit of the background, but this
Yeah.
young girl named Maisie, she loves to tell fun facts and kind of spout off, well, fun fact,
That's
and
perfect.
yeah. And it's actually a great vehicle to just
Yes.
bring in information about the parks without.
Yep.
So that's the fun way of doing
So
it.
you're going to have to now on your website have a PDF that's downloadable of all of Maisie's fun facts.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because that would be so fun to just get like a sheet of like fun fact, fun fact, fun fact.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the things I like about fiction too, is I don't know that I would be apt to regularly pick up a historical tome and read about a place. But then when you're reading fiction and you can get that history woven through it, even through fun facts or however you want to do it, that's when you're like, oh, that was really cool. It was cool to come away learning something about the background of this area. So awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want your readers to know about this book? I mean, we've kind of talked about a lot of stuff, but.
Well, I think that I hope they will obviously read it.
Right.
I hope they will. It's a different kind of a book from what I have read or written before, which generally surrounds a community.
Okay.
And yet there's a little bit that's similar, which is like an outsider's coming in. And that's a theme that's been in all my books of someone. Because I think as an outsider, you have a little bit of a fresh vision. You're seeing things. Maybe, I mean, not that, just you're seeing things with a little bit of an objective eye.
Yeah.
And so Kate Cunningham coming in, trying to fit in among the really experienced photographers who spend their living doing this, this is their life. And she thinks she's going to come in and get a picture,
And get the award-winning National Geographic photo.
Yeah. And just that idea that it's I don't know. I think also the nature and people working together. And
yeah.
I think I hope people will find it and read it and share it, because there's a lot to take away from it.
Yeah.
And like I said at the very beginning, these parks bring us all together.
They do.
We need that as Americans. We need that so much right now.
I would totally agree with that. And I really want to end with the question, does she get the award-winning picture? But I don't think you can answer that.
I will tell you, there are so many twists and turns and surprises. And really, I mean, it's kind of hang on, buckle up.
Okay.
So
all right.
Everything's not quite the way it seems.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. The book is called Capture the Moment by Suzanne Woods Fisher. Comes out in May. And if you like it, be sure to leave reviews for the author. Please leave reviews. And one of the reasons we ask for reviews for books is because it helps other readers find and discover the book. And that's so important. So if you like to share books, share it via review. That'd be great. So.
And if you look at the cover, look very, very carefully in the lens, and you'll see a little surprise.
A little surprise. That's good. All right. Suzanne, thank you so much for being with us today. And that's a wrap for today here at Madlet Musings. I hope you join us again. And if you want to, be sure you like and subscribe here at your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, because you won't want to miss all the wonderful alerts that let you know when we have another conversation for you to eavesdrop on.